Good morning. Thank you all for having me today. It's very beautiful in here. My name is Maya Friedman. I am the organizer with the Marin Organizing Committee. And I don't have the handouts today. My car died on Friday and went to the mechanic, and I left all of my things, my mobile office, in the car. So I will email you a handout about MOC so you can read a little bit more and have that as a resource. So the Marin Organizing Committee is a part of the oldest and largest organizing network in the United States. It's under the umbrella of the Industrial Areas Foundation, which was founded by a man named Saul Alinsky in Chicago in the 40s. And this is our seminal text by him, Reveille for Radicals. So he wrote this book in 1946 in a time when fascism was rampant in Europe. There was widespread cynicism about democracy, and Saul Alinsky was organizing meatpacking workers in the back of the yards in Chicago, and he did that by working with faith-based institutions. He realized that people were going to work with one another, and they weren't talking to each other, and then they were going to church, and they weren't really talking to each other. So he wanted to build some community as a foundation for making some change. And in his book, he was really asking, what do you do when people stop believing that democracy works? Or is democracy worth the trouble? So I say all this to kind of make us think about this moment we're in right now, where people are feeling very challenged by our democracy and feeling like it doesn't work. This feels like very powerless. So what do we do in this moment? So that brings me to MOC, Marin Organizing Committee. We're hyper-local in our organizing. We are, I'm going to give you a lot of hyphenated words to describe us. We are nonpartisan, we are broad-based, and we are member-led. And I'm going to just flip to my little cheat sheet here to talk to you about what does that mean when I say broad-based. It means that this is in contrast to a movement, maybe, like the civil rights movement or women's movement. A broad-based organization, our purpose is to build power. And I can talk a little bit more about that word power, because sometimes people have feelings about that word power. But we build powerful institutions is what we do. We work with faith-based organizations and we work with nonprofits, and we develop those institutions to make them durable, because this is where people are going for community. This is where you go and share your stories and learn who your people are. And then our work is really to develop leadership in those communities. Our leadership is collective, and it is very, very grassroots to the top. And in our institutions, that's where we start to discern what are the stories, what are the issues that we care about in Marin County? What is affecting our lives? The way we work, the way we get to those things, is we develop what we call relational power. So we meet with each other, we meet one-on-one, we get to know each other on a really deep human level. We do things called house meetings, where we meet in small groups and we talk about what is it that keeps us up at night and what is giving us energy to take some action in our communities. And then through sharing those issues and bringing them to light, we can discern, you know what, we all kind of think we need to do something about this street light in our community, and we can organize some public action around that. So public action and accountability. I think I'll share a little bit about me and how I got involved with MOC as a story that kind of tells you about how the organizing works and how we develop people. So in early 2020, February of 2020, and we all know what happened in March of 2020, my mother became suddenly very ill from an autoimmune disease. Overnight, she became quadriplegic and was in a nursing home, went to hospital, nursing home. March 2020, we thought, okay, we got to get you out of here. We got to get you home because felt very dangerous to be on lockdown and COVID. We couldn't visit her. I stopped working and during COVID. And the nursing home told us, you know what, she can go home. She qualifies for caregiving in her home. I thought, great, let's get her out of here. Let's go home. Let's get you a caregiver. We brought her home. My husband and I remodeled her house so she had a ramp and a bathroom that she could use her wheelchair in. And I said, okay, Mom, when did the caregivers come? And she said, oh, I don't know. I thought you knew. I said, well, I don't know. Nobody told me anything. So we found out the hard way that she qualified for caregiving hours, but nobody was going to send a person to us. We had to hire somebody. We had to train that somebody. And the pay from the state and county together was $16 an hour. And she needed 24/7 care for, all of her personal needs. So I became her caregiver because how are we going to hire somebody for $16 an hour? And also the amount of hours that she got initially was very low per month. I think she barely got 8 hours a day, which just wasn't going to cut it. So I began caregiving for her, driving every day to her house with my 2 young children, and I was so mad. I was so mad at this system that I thought should be better than this. And how do people, thank God that I was able to do that. I could leave my job and I could come and I could care for her, because what else would the alternative be? And so I was mad. I was just mad at all the wrong people in all the wrong places. Every home health agency I called, I was mad at them. And through that work and seeking solutions for my mom, I found that the Marin Organizing Committee this was very accidental, but they were doing house meetings around caregiver issues. And I was invited to attend through my congregation at the time, Congregation Kol Shafar, your neighbors here. And I talked about my story, and I realized I was in a circle of several other people having very similar stories around caregiving. And what we found was, you know what? $16 an hour is unacceptable. And can we do something about it? And I was propositioned, Maya, do you want to do something about it? It's like, yeah, I want to do something about it. So we started to organize, what do we need to know? How does this money get paid? Who makes the decisions? Who do we need to go talk to? I was invited to have a seat at the table. We met with the supervisors in Marin County. We met with the public health authority who manages caregivers. We did a ton of research. We met with the powerful people in charge of these decisions, and we pushed to have the wage increase for caregivers. Now we are on a path to $23 an hour in Marin County. So I count that as a huge win, and for the first time, I felt like I was channeling my anger and my energy in the right way. I wasn't just mad at the world. Reverend Carol, you mentioned earlier talking about the world as it is and the world as it should be. And we live in that tension, right? We know what the world should be. And that's what guides us, that love-driven, what the world should be. And then we see what the world how it is. And we've got to navigate that space in between and have the moral maturity to kind of figure that out. So that's my story, and that's how I got involved with MOC. As soon as I started doing that, I said, I'm going to keep doing this, whatever this is. And I still didn't quite, it was still hard to figure out. I'm going to keep doing this. And the opportunity came up for a position to organize with them, and I jumped on it because this felt like the most meaningful work I'd ever participated in. So I said that we organize institutions. That's who makes up our membership. We have 24 member institutions in Marin County, mostly faith-based, some nonprofits, where people go. These are places where people go for their community, where people go to find community. And we work with those institutions to understand what they're seeing in their community, what they want to do to make change. And we help develop leaders who want to do something. Why member institutions matter, I'll give you an example of what we're doing right now. St. Raphael's Catholic Church in San Rafael is one of our member institutions. They are our member with the highest constituency of immigrants of all of our member institutions. And people have been really afraid to come to church, to come to any programming outside of church, and people are isolating and hiding, and that is understandable. But also, that leads to powerlessness. That leads to cynicism and apathy, and the kind of succumbing to the world as it is. So what we want to do as Marin Organizing Committee is meet with our people at St. Raphael's and hear their stories and find out what it is that they want to do to make change in Marin County. We want to build leaders there who can come sit at the table and talk to our Board of Supervisors, who can tell us what would make a meaningful difference in their lives. And sometimes it's surprising. We had house meetings with St. Raphael's a few years ago, centered around this immigration issue again. But what people talked about was, you know what's the worst is I don't have a driver's license because I'm undocumented. And if I get pulled over for having my tail light out, they tow my car and they impound my car, and it costs me thousands of dollars, and I'm out of work. And our churches that they were members of were paying those impoundment fees to help them get their vehicles out. And it was like, you know what, this shouldn't be, can we do something here? So Marin Organizing Committee did a lot of work around the California, the driver's licenses for people who are undocumented. So at least if you get pulled over for something like a brake light out, you have a driver's license, you don't get your car towed, you don't have to deal with that whole chaos. But we went into those conversations thinking we were going to talk about immigration, but what came out was actually, we need this other thing. And we're hearing that right now at St. Raphael's too. We went in to really talk about immigration, but people are talking about housing and their landlords threatening them because of their status. They're talking about their job and that their employer isn't paying them overtime because they can kind of get away with it. And people are afraid to use their voice because of their status. So what we want to do is we want to show our people that courage is really social, and that when we come together and we have each other's backs, we can do something to make change around these issues. So I want to I think I'll maybe leave it there because I gave you a lot of information. But I also want to finish with just an invitation that if you would like to meet with me and get to know me, we call those relational meetings, I'd be more than happy to do that. And that the Mill Valley Community Church was once a member of MOC, and we have maintained this kind of relationship, especially through our friends at Kol Shafar, who are your neighbors here, and that if this speaks to you and you want to find a meaningful way to get involved with MOC and with your local community, I would very much like to have that conversation with you. So I'll pause there and take questions.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Is this Michael? Yes. Thank you so much,
Sure.
Maya. It's great to have you here and to hear these very inviting comments, and there's a lot of questions we could ask. So I just want to bring the mic to whoever has a question.
As you mentioned, our church was a member of MOC. The problem there was, given the size of our congregation, the cost of membership proved to be greater than what we wanted to pay. So one question that I have, and you mentioned close far, but I also understand that the Episcopal Church likewise has been a member, but also not wanting to pay the full cost of membership. And we have friends, good friends, in the Episcopal Church. And the issue or the question of whether two churches, and they're just a block away, could combine with one membership. I'm not speaking for anybody else other than myself.
Other than the curiosity of the question. Thank you for the question. And yes, so we do, the way we work is that our institutions pay an annual membership due, and it is usually scaled to the hard money budget of the church. So that means money that the church knows that they're going to get, excluding grants and other money that's more ephemeral, but based on your hard money budget. And we do that, we charge dues, and we have very frank conversations about this, because when we talk about organizing, we talk about it as organized people and organized money. We don't have the millions of dollars to take on the big guys with lots of influence and a lot of money. We do have people, and we can organize some of our own money so that we are not threatened by changes in the federal government, changes in the state government, changes in the Marin County government. If we rely on grants only, and we do actually apply for a lot of grants at MOC, but if we only rely on that money, we don't feel solidly rooted in our power and our capacity to say, here's what we want, and here's how we're gonna do it. And we're not afraid to upset people who maybe wouldn't like what we have to say, because we have our own base of funding that pays for an organizer to come work with you. And it's also the institution's way of holding us accountable at MOC. Like, we pay you, here's what we want to do, let's get it done. As you said, it's hard for churches right now that have smaller budgets to put something aside for organizing. And we do have organizations that have worked together to combine their dues. And I think that's always an interesting idea, and it in practice has worked well, and there's times when it's worked less well. But I think it's really about the community, and if you feel that you are in a solid community with another congregation, that you could decide that you want to do that. I want to also extend, there's another invitation I want to extend to you, I forgot, that this year we have a supervisor seat open in Novato, and the San Rafael supervisor seat is also up for re-election. She's running unopposed right now. So one of the things we want to do for that is have an accountability session and show up. And we're inviting guests to that, to come see how we work, see us in action. So if this feels interesting to you and you're considering what would it mean for our church to be members, I would like to invite you to that event, and you could really see. It's a little bit outside of it's a bit of a drive to Novato, but it'll be a very concrete example of how MOC works, and it can give you some imagination for what it would mean to do this kind of work in Mill Valley.
I just want to mention that in the past, we actually did share our membership with the organization Seniors for Peace, which is based at the Redwoods. So we each paid half of the membership And I have been talking with Nancy Miller, who's the leader there right now. We had hoped some of them could come today. They weren't able. But that's another conversation to continue, because I think getting not only ourselves connected, but also our neighbors, whether at the Redwoods or at the Episcopal Church, is a very positive thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm wondering how, aside from the financial side, churches do it. Do they have one person in their, one or more persons who are the MOC representatives, and then do they go to a certain number of meetings and then share?
How
with
does
the
it work?
community?
Yeah. We have, what we try to do in our institutions is develop what we call a core team. So this is, they can be thought of as the delegates to MOC, and they can be thought of as the leaders within your institution who convene the group and really understand what's going on in your community. So my job is to help an institution develop that team and bring them into the broader conversation of MOC. So MOC is made up of leaders from their institutions who know what's going on in their community and coming together and strategizing what we want to do together. So that's the short answer for how it works. In reality, it's a little bit messier sometimes than that, but that's the basic idea.
You mentioned working with the California driver's license.
Sure.
The California driver's license issue, and then also raising that pay, which is wonderful for healthcare. They're so underpaid. What are your current issues that you're working on now?
Thank you for asking. Right now we have 3 teams that have just emerged. We went through the last half of last year. We had what we called a house meeting campaign, where we encouraged people in their institutions to meet in small groups and share the things that were affecting their lives. From that, we've pulled out some key big issues, and we've developed some teams that have a lot of energy. So we have an immigration team currently. We have an affordable housing team, and we have an aging and disability team. That doesn't mean that there can't be another team. If you, in your community, you said, you know what, childcare and caregiving is our biggest concern right now, there could be energy to form a team around that. So, but those are the teams we have right now. The aging and disability team, their focus of their research at the moment is around respite care. We don't have any respite care in Marin County, adult daycare centers. And they're really interested in transportation. So accessible transportation for seniors who no longer drive and people with disabilities who can't drive. How do they have reliable, easy, affordable transportation so that they can be a part of their community and don't feel so isolated? That's what they're talking about. Affordable housing is kind of in a research phase right now of what they want to do. But historically, they've lobbied for the construction of affordable housing in Marin County. They're also really interested in working with the community land trusts that are developing in Marin County to build a strategy with them for how to preserve affordable homes that currently exist, and how do we preserve those in the long term.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And then I'll say that for the immigration team, I was very glad to hear you, Carol, share about the Marin Interfaith Council that are working on whistle packets and the accompaniment network. We have been collaborating with the Marin Rapid Response Network and all the other folks doing really good on the ground action. And then what our role is to really engage our constituents who are immigrants, who want a seat at the table, to have conversations with the supervisors, with the sheriff, with other important power players in Marin County to figure out what our electeds can do to support our community. So that's our current strategy with that team.
So these specific teams, are they made up of people from various organizations then, rather than one organization focusing on its own project?
Exactly. Well, we do both things. So these teams, yes, are many institutions coming together to work around an issue, a shared issue in Marin County. And in that way, we say, we have this power across the county to make some change. We also do projects within institutions. I mentioned, like a stoplight or a crosswalk. You might notice in your neighborhood, this is a really dangerous intersection, and we've got to do something about it. And I'm giving that as an example. Sometimes people say, well, we want to do something bigger than stoplights and crosswalks. And to which I say, if you can't organize to get that stoplight fixed, then how are you going to take on, ICE? So, and those are things that actually are very meaningful to communities. We have, in one of our sister organizations in Fresno, outside of one of the churches, was a very dangerous intersection where people were constantly getting T-boned. Kids were so scared to cross the street after church. And it took them, surprisingly, a year and a half to be taken seriously by their city council to put in a crosswalk. So these are real fights, actually, that we can take on, and they're very meaningful. That intersection now is safer, it's got blinking lights, it's got all the, but these are serious issues too. And we like to work with institutions around things that you see in your neighborhood or immediately that you want to do something about.
I worked with community organizing in the East Bay, and what we found at our little church, which was in a fairly well-to-do community, is that we weren't suffering. And it was really hard for us to come up with a goal. We did better when we were working hand in hand with some of the churches in Union City where had lower income people and immigrants and so forth, because they did have a real problem. But we went around and around and around in our congregation, I don't know, a couple of years. We never could come up with anything that anybody cared that much about. We did participate on a statewide level, and I don't know if Marin does that. We went to Sacramento one time in a bunch of buses and there was a huge rally. Anyway, so that's something that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, so I have two reactions to what you just shared. And one is, I think the beauty of MOC model is that we have a lot of people who care very deeply about their community and their community at large, and sometimes feel maybe removed from the problems they know exist. We know there's homelessness. We know there's undocumented immigrants who are living in fear. We know that housing is really unaffordable for people, but it might not be like my life that is feeling those pressures. So being able to bring people together in conversation and get to know one another and develop relationships and understand from that person's perspective what would really make meaningful difference in their life is a beauty of Marin organizing, I think. And also, I don't. Those are big issues, and those are what we think of a lot when we think about social change in Marin County. But I would challenge you that your life is perfect and easy and wonderful, and that you don't all share some hardship together. That you could actually, if you came together and talked about it, you'd be like, yeah, we could fix that. That's not great. So that's one part of it. And then the second part is we do have a network. So I mentioned the IAF is the oldest, largest network in the United States. We have 7 organizing projects in California right now, throughout the state. sister organization in Los Angeles, one LA. We have Central Valley, Fresno. We just founded an organization in Silicon Valley. And then we are working on developing an organization in Sacramento. There was one that existed. It's shrunk in size, so we're going to invest some energy in building there because that's a state capital. We should be there. And we do work collaboratively as a network occasionally when big things come up that we need to respond to as a state. So last year we organized I think 400 people to go to the state capitol when the governor's budget was proposing to cut Medi-Cal for undocumented people and change the asset limit for folks. That would make it would drop just so many thousands of people off of Medi-Cal. And we're talking about people's lives, right, to balance the budget. So we organized a large group of people to go to Sacramento, and we met with our elected representatives in Sacramento and lobbied. And they knew it was great. They heard we were coming, and there was a big buzz that like, oh, the IAF is coming. We better get ready for this. So it felt very good and meaty and powerful. But we can't mobilize what we haven't organized. So if we don't have people here in Marin County who are thinking and strategizing, we can't fill a bus to Sacramento. Right? So we got to do some groundwork here and develop our leaders and our people and our thinkers. And then when big things come up, we're ready to go. Yeah, Lisa.
Thank you. Hi. In addition to being a member of this congregation, I also sit on the Live Well Mill Valley Aging and Disability Advisory Committee. And we recently did a survey in conjunction with AARP to assess needs here in Mill Valley. And I'm wondering if there's room for our committee, but that brings up another question, or just a committee without a budget. We all volunteer our time on the committee, but there might be a place to join expertise and interest. Just wondering about that. That brings up another question. I know institutions pay a membership fee. If individuals want to participate, do we need to come in under an institution, or do we also pay some type of fee? Thank you.
Great question. I'm going to take the second question first, and then come back to the first. It's our institutions who are members, and our leaders come in affiliated with an institution. Yes, typically. I came in without an institution. My children went to preschool at Kol Shafar, and so I sort of, I claimed them, but I didn't feel like I was a leader in that institution. But they adopted me and let me claim them as a member. We have a new institution called the Community Leaders Coalition. And this institution was developed by individuals who lost their institutional membership to MOC. So we had a large Catholic parish that was a member, and they had a big group of strong leaders there. And the Catholic Church didn't want to be members anymore because they were anxious about being political, which we're seeing is not uncommon with our Catholic membership. There's conservative. There's a very conservative archbishop in San Francisco, and so people are feeling like we're not comfortable being political, even though we don't take on issues other than the ones that the people in the church want to take on. So we lost that institutional member, but the people who were there, who were involved with MOC, didn't want to let it go. So they developed their own coalition. So there is the Community Leaders Coalition that meets. They're mostly members from that Catholic parish, but then also we've picked up people from other places who's aren't affiliated with an institution, or their institution isn't they wouldn't be members, like people's workplace, that they work in affordable housing, for example, and they're interested in these conversations, but their employer wouldn't be an appropriate member. So that is one caveat, that there is this other group. In terms of your Aging Disability Committee, I think that also wouldn't be what we would think of as an institution, but it is a way for this institution to be thinking about their involvement with MOC. So we often, when we have an issue we care about in our personal lives, in our community, we do what we call research actions. We meet with the people who are really understanding that problem in our community, in our county. And so we kind of develop these partnerships with groups that know a lot and do a lot, and we work through usually like a few people who maybe sit on the committee and also are a part of their institution. So that's how we interface that. Does that help? Bobby? Yeah.
Hi, thank you. First I want to say how important it is for $23 an hour, right, for a care provider. Right now at the county level, they just hit $20 an hour. And that is one of the kind of hurdles to get over to provide a care provider for people who are in need. Mm-hmm. And so my question is, I'm just curious to know, in the beginning of your talk, you spoke about local, state, federal kind of influences, mm-hmm. and how free it is to not be connected, where you can do things that you want to do. Is it mostly the conflict with state, when MOC is doing what they do they really mostly come in conflict with these state, local, federal kind of things, or do they get support from them? How do you work in collaboration with like in-home support services, if that happens, or anything like that?
Yes, so we, it depends on the issue. It depends if we know we're going to go in for a fight, or if we're going in with that we can be partners and collaborators. We treat our elected officials. We let them know that they work for us, right? And so sometimes they don't want to do the job we want them to do, and then we kind of bring a little bit more of a fight. But often we can think about strategies to work together, and what is in their interest and what is in our interest, and how do we work together. We have a phrase that says, no permanent friends, no permanent enemies. So, sometimes we work with unexpected electeds to get the job done, and sometimes we work with people that we personally don't like them very much, but they've got some power, and so we know how to work with them strategically. MOC is very well respected in the county by all of our government agencies. They do take us very seriously. IHSS, Public Authority were hugely important in that fight for the caregiver wages. It was interesting because we advocated for higher wages, but then the caregivers are with a union, and they had to actually negotiate with the county. They had to negotiate their wage with the county. So we worked to set the floor of the wage and then teed them up to be powerful in their negotiations. So we have good relationship with the union. We have good relationship with the county. We value those relationships very much, and we build our political capital, and we spend it carefully, right? We don't want to fight with somebody. We don't really want to take them on unless we really have to. That's our MO.
Thank you.
Sure.
I'm just going to look at my watch conspicuously here. Yeah, so we've got 11:45, and I feel like a lot of information has come through here. This is like the great beginning of a conversation. So I just wanted to check, are there any other questions for today? Do you want to say anything wrapping up here, Maya?
I will send my personal information so that it can be emailed to you, and a one-pager about MOC so you can have a little cheat sheet. And if you want to meet with me and talk more and get to know each other, I would love to do that. And if there's some energy in your institution to think about joining MOC, we can figure out a way to meet and talk about that too.
That sounds good. We ready to close then for the day? Okay.
Thank you all so much. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you, Maya.